This is another short video. We're going to have a look at the biblical creation stories in this video. So we're going to start by looking at God as the Father in Genesis. So Genesis is the book of Genesis, the first book of the Bible. And this is where the creation stories come from. Okay, so in the beginning, God brings order to chaos. Okay, by speaking aloud, God then brings all into existence. This is a very interesting part of theory here, because by speaking aloud, what you are doing, you speak aloud and you bring something into existence. What you are doing is you are creating ex nihilo. Okay, this is the Latin for creation from speak. Okay, from speech, something out of nothing from speech. Okay, creatio ex nihilo. Over 6 days, God created all the plants, all the people and creatures, which what God creates is described as good. Okay, so in Genesis 1:10, God calls the dry land earth. Okay, so we're seeing really here that God creates the entire world, the entire universe, all the plants, the birds and the creatures and the people, through speech over a course of 6 days. Because of course on the seventh day he rested. So on the seventh he rested, which is why we have weeks. So on the seventh day he rested. Okay. And the idea that God creates humans on the last day, this was God creates humans last, he creates them on the last day. This was seen because God wanted humans to have dominion over all creatures. So God wanted to look after humans, to look after the creatures. Humans to look after all creatures. Okay. Now, what is the role of the Spirit in Genesis? Okay. So what we have here is the Spirit is present in Genesis 1. He hovers over the waters. Okay, hovers over the waters. As we saw in the last video, the Spirit is God, because God exists in three. God exists in three. This is the principle of the Holy Trinity. So he exists as the Father, he exists as the Son, and he exists as the Holy Spirit. Simple, okay? And then we're going to look at Genesis 2 here. So Genesis 2 is a little bit interesting because technically there is a contradiction between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. There are technically two creation stories here. There's the creation story where God created the world and people and creatures and plants in 7 days. And then there's the Genesis story in Genesis 2, which is the story of Adam and Eve. Okay, so God breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. This is into Adam. Adam being the first man. Okay, and from Adam's rib, he creates a companion for Adam. The companion being Eve, who is the first woman. We're going to look a little bit more about Genesis 2 in a later video because it really ties into the concept of original sin, the Genesis 2 story. But this is where the creation of man and woman came in Genesis 2. He breathed life into nostrils, the breath of life. And then he created from one of Adam's ribs, Eve, who was the first woman. Okay, so these are the two creation stories that we have here. We have the idea of the 7-day creation story, and then we have the idea of the Adam and Eve creation story.